Right, so a lot of optimism. Let's take a deeper dive into this ecosystem now. We have two experts joining us. We have a founder of a company, so let's understand a little bit more about the ecosystem from him. And then after that, we'll go over to a senior defense expert to understand more. But first, we're coming over to you. Mayank Dalmia joins us this morning. He's the co-founder of Wave Mechanics. Mayank, just cut through the clutter for us and explain to us. When the Aero show is happening, when we speak to experts, a lot of them say, India's really developing cutting edge tech out there. How cutting edge is our tech? Where is the innovation happening? Is it indeed in India? What are the exciting parts? Break it down for us.
Hi, good morning, Toya. Thank you for having me on the show. So when we talk about, cutting edge innovation in defense, there certainly is a lot of that happening in India. If we look at drones, for example, I think there's a lot of wonderful work happening. You've covered some of it yourself. Drones, I think, in general, are seeing a massive boom across the world, especially after the Russian-Ukraine war, which has kind of shifted the perspective on what drones are capable of on the battlefield. Besides drones, though, in India, I would say innovation really has been towards missiles and radars, when we talk about deep technology. So those are two areas where India has done, quite well. And we are innovators at a global stage, meaning that our missiles or the radars that we're producing are, competitive and innovative at a global stage. Those, I would say, are the broad areas where we are doing a great job. There are, of course, many other areas that we are not doing such a great job. But yeah, I'll leave that for a different question.
All right. Now you can carry on with that, Mayank, which is going to be my question. That at a time when you see government funds and allocations going into defense big time, you just heard some of the founders there saying this is a booming time for drones and several others. What are the highlights that you clearly pointed out? But what's the area where you think we're still relying on the global manufacturers?
Right. So, just to talk about drones a little bit on why we are seeing such a large boom for drones. So if you think about war as, a very functional and practical thing, war essentially boils down to money, right? And who can sustain spend over a long period of time. So in the past, a war would countries would spend millions and millions of dollars building up expensive equipment. You'd have a tank that costs maybe 4 million, 10 million. You'd have planes that cost 400 million. To blow up a tank that costs $10 million, you'd send a $400 million plane with a pilot that's received, $15 million worth of training. The risk of that plane going down, of course, you can imagine the cost of that plane going down, both in terms of loss of the pilot as well as the plane. All of that has changed now. Suddenly, the Russian-Ukraine war has shown us that suddenly you can strap, a little explosive that costs maybe $400 on a $1,000 drone, and that is actually capable of taking out extremely expensive and extremely advanced equipment. So that has essentially completely changed the game. It's a paradigm shift where suddenly we are seeing the cheapening of war, which is, to be honest, a scary thing.
Yeah.
So we're seeing, the cheapening of war, the proliferation of drones into the hands of people that are trained, within a couple of months, and now they're capable of flying these drones and taking out very expensive equipment. The negative side of that is, of course, terrorism as well. We've seen Saudi Arabia get attacked by drones, oil refineries, so on and so forth. So that's the bit on the drone side. Beyond that, I think in the Indian landscape, what we really need to focus on is low-cost manufacturing. So I think that is the core advantage that India stands to gain on the global stage. We need to be the factory for the world. So I think there are a lot of steps being taken towards that. We do, of course, have a long way to go. But, that's companies like me, that's what we're focused on. Building out a supply chain where large advanced OEMs of the world can come to India and produce in India.
Okay, so we've kind of, Mayank touched on two very important topics here, and I want to almost address the first part because you took it to a rather, frankly, scary place. The fact that wars have now changed the face of what fighting actually looks like. Drones in particular, you said, are a growing area. But I just want to understand from you, post the US, the Russia war that we've seen play out, the Russia-Ukraine war that we've seen play out, how have countries countered? What is the plans countries have come up with to counter the threat of drones? What does that technology look like?
So, great question. So there's something called counter drone technology. You have a picture of that on your screen right now with the policeman holding up a little radio frequency device. So that's essentially called a soft kill method, where you're trying to you're trying to jam the GPS, or you're trying to jam the drone in some form or the other and bring it down. Of course, besides that, you have something called a hard kill technology, which is actually sending a kinetic device. So you send a physical object, maybe a drone itself typically, to physically hit the other drone and take it down. So these are called counter drone technologies. I think this is probably one of the biggest booming areas across the world today. We see governments, not just governments, but even at the local base level. So each Air Force base or Army base, you see them investing in counter drone technology, which essentially consists of a little radar and either a hard kill or a soft kill accompanying it. So at the Aero India show today, if you go into the IDEX pavilion, you'd see about 50 to 60% of what's being presented touching upon this. I will say that if I had to start up a company today, I would look at something maybe called counter drone, which is actually it sounds funny, but it's a counter to the counter drone. So it's called CCD, and essentially what you do is you block their ability to block you, and then you essentially moot all of their defense against your drones. So that's a very exciting area. I think that is not really being looked at in India yet. I'm sure there may be some companies looking at it, but I think that could be a very interesting area. You have to be thinking a few steps ahead.
Yeah, you've actually answered that question. I was going to ask you if anybody was looking at starting or doing a startup today, which one would that actually be? But Mayank, a rather basic question over here is this tech then, this counter drones, etc., available to all, or are there sort of national IPs on this? And how does it really work cross-border if at the end of the day it's going to be about protecting your borders?
I wouldn't say that there's national IP. As far as I can tell, this is largely in the private industry. Given the size, the accessibility of these drones, as well as the counter drone technology, it's very accessible to private players. It's not like engine technology or avionics technology, which is something that you definitely need government intervention in order to develop. Engines, for example, is an area that the government has been focusing on for maybe the last almost 60 years with zero success. We have something called the Kaveri engine, but unfortunately, it's not really received a lot of purchase within the industry. You take something like drones, on the other hand, within a couple of years, within the last 5 years, we've already seen, massive companies emerge out of India, such as Idea Forge. So it's a very, very accessible technology. And I don't think it's possible to corner IP, in the drone game. It's highly commoditized, especially the hardware side of things. So where you may be able to protect some IP is on the application side. But even then, you have so many companies doing this. It's really not possible to nationalize or have the government involved in IP protection.
I see. Okay, and I believe we have time for one more question. So, Mayank, just tell us, earlier we were talking a little bit about what needs to be the focus of the Indian defense sector. And I just want to understand from you, when it comes to talking about tech, so different from this, when we talk about tech, we often say that India needs more innovation. We are covering the bases of manufacturing very, very well, but innovation, R&D, that needs to be where we focus on. You're not saying a similar thing for the defense sector. Is that correct?
Look, it's a controversial subject. R&D by its very nature is, not a thing accessible for small players. Any startup, for example, unless you've raised funds, you're never going to look at R&D. you need to start generating revenue, and then R&D may be coming in later. So I would say R&D within, when you really talk about innovation within defense, that does need to be pushed by the government. There's no doubt about it. Low-level innovation in drones, maybe the private sector can manage, but true innovation, like if you talk about laser technology, for example, we are still talking about kinetics and missiles. The US has completely switched over to laser. So instead of firing missiles at you, they fire an energy beam, a concentrated energy beam. And it's quite Star Wars-esque in the sense that it is a
I was just
reality
gonna
now.
say, yeah.
They are actually capable of shooting down objects at a great distance using lasers. So something like that absolutely needs to be driven solely by the government. I don't think any private organization would have the wherewithal to, get into that. So on the innovation side, I would say that's what it is. What I think India should really be focusing on is the Navy. So there's been a lot of focus on the air and on the army, but really, I mean, if you look at our adversaries such as China, Navy is really what we need to focus on. It's somewhere where we're really lagging behind. And you talk about drones. So there are drones for the sea as well. They're called USVs, unmanned sea vehicles. So that's an area that I would personally focus on. It requires a lot of money. It requires a lot of focus, but it's at the moment it's underserved.
All right, Mayank, we'll leave it there for the moment. Lots of interesting food for thought, as they say, coming out of this conversation. Thank you so much. But we're not done with this just yet. We also have Dr. MJ Augustine Vinod, a columnist, author, and retired group captain joining us now. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for your time. We've sort of got a sense of what's really happening in terms of innovation. With you, can we start by understanding what, according to you, in your experience, is the need of the hour when it comes for defense tech in India?
Thank you for having me, Toya Sonal, and great listening to Mayank. And good thought process, some of which I'm still chewing. The indigenous development of critical systems like radar, electronic warfare, AESA radar, which we are working on, and we have reached to some levels. Hypersonic weapons. Let me tell both of you, there is today no counter to hypersonic weapons. The interceptor missile is not hypersonic, so something which is moving faster.
Could you explain what hypersonic means simply for everybody's understanding? Yeah.
Something which moves faster than the speed of sound is supersonic. But when you hit at 5 times the speed of sound, which is called the 5 Mach, then the temperature rise comes into picture. If you recall the re-entry vehicle, when something re-enters from space, you see it goes into a ball of fire, isn't it? Yeah, so that is when the speed of sound reaches a value of 5. Then the temperature rise is so large that your body starts to melt. So you need special equipment and special kind of airframe utilized to fly a hypersonic weapon. And a supersonic missile, which is made out of aluminum, cannot intercept a weapon which is anything, weapon or aeroplane or missile, which is faster than itself. So hypersonic, today we have no answer for hypersonic. We need hypersonic weapons. Cyber AI capability a little bit has been touched upon. We have great cybertech, especially defensive cybertech. But offensive cybertech is something which countries have invested on, especially China. We have not invested much on that. And when will it hit us bad? When the chips are down. Currently, everyone is silently working in offensive cybertech. So that is something I think we need to put a lot of money on, and a little bit has been covered by Modi ji yesterday, obliquely in that AI summit. And space and counter space capabilities are nearly there. Counter space capabilities, also called the ASAT, anti-satellite weapons. That is something we've not talked about at all. I don't know what is the reason. So I think almost half a decade ago, China demonstrated its capability to shoot down a particular satellite. Next is UAV, next generation UAV development has been talked about. What I'm really excited on is the CATS Warrior. I'm sure one of these days you will cover. It is a Loyal Wingman program where the drones will accompany a manned fighter jet as its extended long arm. It is there on display in the Aero India this time.
I
Then
see.
indigenous manufacturing, especially the supply chain resilience companies are working on. We interviewed one today. And of course, deep tech. Deep tech and private sector integration is something we are on track. Are we on track adequately? Is a question I'll leave it to the viewers. A lot of money needs to be pumped in with not much of immediate revenue that will flow in. Therefore, investors are little, wary on putting money in deep tech. But deep tech is the place to go. Elon Musk has demonstrated us adequately. So these are six, I think, areas which we need to focus on.
Okay, so I'll ask you, could you just firstly tell us what is deep tech? Is deep tech just AI and the pushing off of boundaries in the technical world? Just define that for us first, then we'll come to you further.
Super. So, see, how I put it normally in my talks, what I say is deep tech is an answer to a problem, especially an R&D problem. That is very, very simple way of putting the deep tech understanding. So you will have an R&D problem for which you will need a tech which is outside your own solution that you are bringing out on the street. So that simply sums up the deep tech. So you will need, for example, the recovery of a rocket. I mean, Elon Musk is demonstrating that that to us adequately. But do you know the recovery of or a reusable rocket technology has been there since 1960s, but woefully short, woefully failed. NASA gave up in the 60s. They completely gave it up. They said it is useless to try to recover a rocket.
Was
and
it that
let
it was
it
too
go into
expensive? What was the reason?
The tech was not following up with the solution. But a man came along and he provided us the solution. So you see, deep tech is very wide canvas. You need to understand the problem and provide solution which is outside the realm of the existing tech.
Okay.
I mean, to simply put, that is what deep tech it is. Deep tech is all about. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got into a lot of fine details then. Can we sort of come back on the surface a little bit and ask you a more basic question here? So, in your experience, you've been around for several decades now. In your experience, how has cyber warfare versus the real warfare, combat versus this hybrid mode that we were talking about, how has that evolved over the years? Is there... where do you see it going moving forward?
Super question, and you couldn't have asked it to any other generation than the Gen X. So I have seen, for first time when I picked up a telephone, I thought it'll explode in my hand, and we got the telephone when I was 10, 50, a black looking thing. I don't know whether you've even seen it. So we've seen from no tech to deep tech in our lifetime. So we're talking about cyber. See, you look at warfare in the reverse order. What is the aim of the warfare? To defeat the enemy. The means that you apply will justify the end. Therefore, you've seen that warfare starts first start of the warfare, if you realize, or if you go back to the Ukraine-Russia warfare, the first thing that the West did was freeze the money of the oligarchs.
Sanctions,
you remember? Yeah. So economic pressure is the first action. There is another silent action which is always happening. It is right now as we speak is happening, the cyber attacks. So we are, even your computer, you put antivirus, isn't it? It is what? It's a cyber attack and you're protecting yourself from it. So rise of hybrid warfare is a big challenge, and cyber warfare is one of them. This using of disinformation, using of AI to create disinformation. We saw that in the case of Amit Shah ji. Drone and AI warfare, we have already talked about. Drone combined with AI is another a concoction which currently has little or no counter tech to it. Then, of course, critical threat. If you recall, the SCADA systems of Iranian nuclear, this thing got attacked by a pen drive which had songs in it. So attacking critical threat, critical and sensitive area is something, again, there is a large requirement that one should work towards if you want to win a war. Net-centric warfare, like today, you and I are talking thousands of miles apart and on the network. Similarly, the war happens on the network. Net-centric warfare includes you fighting the war against your enemy on the networked environment and protecting your network. Towards that, I can tell you, India is way ahead of its competitors. We have the backbone, which is completely independent, not one, 3 or 4 backbones, which are completely independent of the internet, I mean, the quote-unquote internet. So we are there on NCW. Now, counter NCW is something everyone is trying to catch up, because all the time the counter NCW is ahead of you than the counter NCW. So every time you have a new update that is coming up, and of course, the space-based warfare capability, any country worth its salt needs to work towards this space-based warfare capability, including eavesdropping from space, where we are okay. Weaponizing space, there is a moratorium of 1985 which forbids it, but I know for fact you can use anything from space to weaponize. So that is something we need to really look at.
Doctor, it's such a vast discussion, and it's so fascinating because each niche that we talk about, we can go on for another 20 minutes. But Doctor, thank you for pointing out the areas that remain for our country's growth, where it's important to grow. Counter. I've heard that so many times today. Yeah. Okay, we're going to head into a break after the break.
Yeah, and also I think the message here is that it's constantly about innovation and tech.
Of course.
It's constantly about who's got the tech and who's got the pockets to actually make it, which is also exciting, and so good to see so much of talent emerging from India as well.